You like playing games, but find that you have limited time to enjoy them. And so you start playing Destiny 2 thinking that you're going to have fun. And you spend 10 hours looking on YouTube videos to find out what the hell is happening in the story and how do I even connect to my friends. Well, I've designed the game ranking tool for the 9 to 5 worker to help you evaluate the prospects of games that you're considering to play to see if they're even going to be compatible with your lifestyle. As a 9 to 5 worker myself, when I get home, I have limited time between doing my dishes and taking my cat for a walk. And so it's very valuable to me that in that small amount of time, I'm having fun with the game that I invest into. So I have determined certain characteristics that are very useful for you to understand when you're evaluating a game. Today, I'm looking at Nubby's Number Factory that you may have heard of. It's on Steam. I'll take you through these criteria, I'll explain them as I go through them, and then I'll assign a ranking and give you a recommendation as to whether I think this game is going to be worth your while. So, getting right into it, the game is called Nubby's Number Factory. I've played it right now for 10 hours. The price is only $6.49 Canadian. So in USD, that's effectively free for you. The genre, it's a roguelike game, roguelite. It's a single player game. And we'll just start immediately on evaluating it. So the time to reward. You buy the game and you press play. How quick is it for you to have fun? For this one, it is immediate. There is a tutorial, but the tutorial introduces you to the core loop of the game off the bat. There's no cutscenes, there's no dialogue, there's no waiting to connect in multiplayer. It's you get the game, you're immediately having fun. So this one gets a 5 out of 5. You can't really get better than what this game provides from that respect. Learning curve. How easy is the game to learn? How long does it take for you to become good at it? Well, the concept of the game is incredibly simple. There is a pegboard with pegs that have a number on them. They all start at 2. And when you launch a ball, just like Peggle, where you have a cannon that shoots a ball down and you can only control the angle that it fires from, and then you shoot your ball, it bounces off a peg. When it touches the peg reduces its score by half, and you get the score that it reduces by. So if you hit a peg with a score of 12, you would get 6 points. And then your ball bounces and falls to the bottom, and then you retry. And the goal is every round to exceed a score threshold. So the first score, you may need to get 10. If you fail to get 10 points, you will lose 1 life. If you lose all of your lives, it's game over. That's the basis of the game. The modification to that there are little upgrades that you can procure that modify the way that the game plays based on when you bounce, what happens, when your ball is bouncing for 5 seconds, what happens. There are little things that multiply your score in different ways. And so the purpose of the game is to accumulate different combinations of upgrades to multiply your score in the highest way. Very typical roguelike gameplay style, but the learning curve is not difficult. The only thing, there is a learning curve though, and the first few times you play, you will see things in your available store, or you will have multiple available options of things to get, and without knowing what other things there are that you can combine with, it will be impossible for you to make the best decision off the bat. So you are more likely in this game to fail for your first few runs just due to lack of understanding of how everything works and not being able to take advantage of synergies by virtue of not knowing what upgrades go well with each other. So there is something to learn, and so I guess I have to give this a 4, because theoretically there are games where the only controls you need to know are running and jumping. So given that there are things to learn in this game, I'll give it a 4. But that being said, it's incredibly easy to learn what this game is. So just take a few seconds to read what the things do, and it'll become pretty intuitive to understand how upgrades can combine with one another. Session flexibility. So what is the average session time for gameplay? How long does it take to beat the average run? Are there minimum durations? Are you locked into certain play times? For this game, because it's single player, you can quit at any time. I don't know if your progress is preserved when you quit. So why don't we quickly just find that out? Because that will determine part of how good it scores in this category. So I'm just going to launch the game here, hopefully. And let's see here. So if I press play, and then I go classic mode and next, and I press default character, my weights, and hopefully get past. Okay, so I'm now on round 2, and I'm now gonna save and quit, and then okay, so you can load your game, so you can preserve progress. Perfect. So this gets a good score then, because you're not locked in for any minimum amount of time. It's not multiplayer. You don't have to wait for anybody else. So you can play for as long or as little as you want. If your dog vomits on the couch and you have to go clean it up before your wife slips on it, you can just do that immediately, which is great. How long does it take to beat the average run? Oh, it's got to be like 15 minutes. It depends on how long you agonize over your choices. So I would say this is pretty good. It's about as good as you can get. Grind and Tedium. Is the game grindy, tedious, or monotonous? Does the game respect your time as a player? Does it ask you to collect resources or do a lot of grinding by doing monotonous tasks in order to pursue enjoyable parts of the game? Not at all. It's not a grind. It's a roguelike. There are meta things that you can pursue, such as different characters, or you can beat challenges if you want, but none of that is. It doesn't really encourage you to do that. There's no meta system to upgrade. So I'd say this is great in that regard. Value proposition. You may think, wow, it's only 650 Canadian. That's going to have a great value proposition. And maybe 5 years ago, I would have said you're right. But today, I have to evaluate this based on the massive amount of games that are available at this price point. It's ridiculous, I know. But there are so many indie games now that sell for around this price and yet offer unbelievable amounts of content. So is the game incredibly cheap? Of course it is. Which is, of course, it's a very important part of what factors into this score. But how much content do you get for the game as it is right now? Not actually that much. In 10 hours, I've won with about half the characters. I've gotten the highest score, like a Google or whatever. The score just multiplies exponentially. It becomes ridiculous. It doesn't really matter after a certain point because you win by 10,000 times what the requirement is anyway. But, I've gotten ridiculous scores, tapping out 99999, whatever. I got that within like the first hour. There's only a few game-breaking synergies. There's not that many items in the shop. There's not that many novel combinations of things. So in my 10 hours, I really feel like there's almost nothing new for me to do. And I think it was a stretch to even get that far. Because the game is so fast and you can get through the runs so quickly, and because of the limited nature of the content, you're going to have a few good runs, and there's a bit of dopamine the first time you hit the 99999 point multiplier, but every time after that, it's just boring, and you just try to skip it as fast as you can. So there's good bones to this game. It's a quirky, fun game. There are things to do, and it is very affordable. So I would recommend, if you've looked at it and you think it might be worth your time, the novelty is going to be driving most of the enjoyment you have, but that will wear off very, very quickly. So with that being said, it can't be as bad as I can't give a game like this a 3. I'm going to give it a 4, though. It could be better for the price, but it is still, I don't think you're going to feel as if you were ripped off if you buy this game for the price that it's at. I think if you like the core loop of the game, I think you're going to think it's more than reasonable for the cost. Memory burden. This is really not the type of game that might be applicable for this. So the memory burden is used to evaluate how easy it is to understand what you're doing after picking up the game after a long time of having not played it. So if you can imagine you're playing a complicated RPG, imagine you're playing The Elder Scrolls Skyrim, and you have a character that you've been playing for 75 hours. You're in the middle of 52 side quests, you're 1/3 through the story, and halfway through one of the DLCs. Your stats are all over the place. You've got 700 pounds of loot in your inventory, and you're over encumbered. You're in Blackreach, and you can't fast travel anywhere. And you load up the game after 2 months from that save file, and you look and you try to figure out, what the hell am I doing right now? And you can imagine how that might be an overwhelming sensation. And you might spend your only available 2 hours of playtime reading things to try and remember where you were at. So that's what I call the memory burden of a game. The longer you can play with a single character, the more the memory burden accumulates. Other games that have incredibly complex systems would also apply a memory burden. For this game, every time you play, you start from scratch, so you don't have to brush up on everything you did before. Also, the systems, the only thing you can physically do in the game is point and shoot a ball in an angular direction, maximum 180 degrees. So by nature, it's extremely simple and intuitive. So there is no memory burden. The only thing you could conceivably forget is what a specific item does just by looking at it, but you can always read it. So I'd say memory burden on this one is non-existent. Core loop satisfaction. Good, not great. So it's fun. It's novel. It's kind of a bit like Peggle if you played that, with a spin, a roguelike spin. And there are a few good hours of dopaminergic satisfaction there based on the novelty of, wow, I combine this and I combine that and it's working, it's succeeding, I'm doing well, and that's great. And for $5, hey, no harm done. That being said, this is not the type of game that I'm going to come back to for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So I don't think it's super fun. It's a pretty low substance thing. Maybe when they add a lot more content, or maybe they need to add a spin on what there is to do in the game, it's going to be more fun overall. But don't take this as a reason to think that it's not a fun game. It is. It's just shallow. It's limited in what you can do. If you imagine a game like Binding of Isaac, the complexity of things that there are in that game loop, there's so many ways just to engage with the core game loop that make it more fun. Whereas in this game, it's limited, and you can imagine the types of builds that you can concoct in Theorycraft is, okay, I have a build about popping pegs, I have a build about skipping all the pegs and letting my guy die, I have a build about bouncing off the walls in the peg chamber, or I have a build that it's irrelevant what I do because the little upgrades just act regardless of whether my peg exists or not. And then that's it. And once you've had a build of each of those categories, there's really no other way to play the game at that point. And so you kind of lose your incentive to bother trying again because none of the combinations of items satisfy you in a novel way anymore. So it's all right. It's not a bad game, but it's not, super fun. Flex points. I don't think I'm going to give any flex points to this. For my personal preferences, I did enjoy it. I like how quickly it loads. Obviously it has low memory requirements. Performance is obviously not going to be an issue. Extremely cheap. It's fun to just pull up when I'm waiting in between sets for a workout or something like that on my laptop, or just to do on the side if I'm waiting for a cutscene or something in a longer game. It's you can open it and close it pretty quick, so get some entertainment out of it. But it didn't resonate with me in a way that I'm like, wow, what a great gameplay loop. It wasn't super interesting. That being said, so I didn't give it a rave review in terms of the quality of the core loop. However, it still achieved 4.4, which is an overall great score because it's so easy to go in and out. It's cheap. It respects your time. It's immediately fun. Easy to remember what you're doing. Overall, for the 9-to-5 gamer, you can't go wrong with this. But, this is only going to get you maybe a week's worth of enjoyment, maybe 4 days. So you're going to have to figure out what your next game is too, pretty quickly. So I'll add this to the list of games. Nubby's Number Factory. And let's see here. What were the scores? 5-4, 5-5, 4-5-3. 5, 4, 5, 5, 4, 5, 3, and a 0. And that puts it at a 4.4, which makes it rank number 1 or 2. From the outside perspective, knowing nothing about the intent of this tool, you'll see Nubby's Number Factory almost next to Expedition 33, and you may be very confused about why those two scores are so close. But again, the intent of this is not to evaluate the objective quality of the game as a whole. The intent is to evaluate how much enjoyment somebody with limited time to play is likely to get out of the game. So consider that amongst all of the other things I've said and make a decision about whether or not you think this game is for you.